last year we created a webinar around pregnancy, birthing, and labor, and also support of the mom after the babies. And we wanted to kind of expand on things today because we've had some folks reach out and talk to us about the newborns. So we thought we would give you a little support around that. Saving lives one remedy at a time. Anybody that knows anything about childbirth, whether it's for your animals or yourself or family member, it can be messy. And both humans and animals benefit from homeopathy when things go awry. And some of the craziest things can happen. It can be really simple or it can be really complicated. But homeopathy treats the whole being and puts the vital force back on track. So you really can see a shift quickly with a little being. I outlined some of the rubrics or symptoms that are in one of the softwares that we use, and just to give folks kind of an idea of what we're looking for. What came to mind, and Dr. Alex, tell me if you know this quote. It's called "The devil is in the details."
Yes, I mean,
you've heard it before.
I understand the meaning.
Yeah, yeah.
That, but not we use it a lot.
It's all about the details with homeopathy. You know, we want to see the specifics. You can see here, and I will zoom in on this a little bit, you know, generalities: dying babies, premature babies, baby lies as if in death, blueness in the babies, heartbeat imperceptible. You know, all of these things are kind of general, but also very specific to newborns. If they're having asphyxia, if I found a great rubric, and I think you and I would have been thrilled to see this last year, around tetanus in newborns, because we had some tetanus goat cases that we worked on for some little tiny babies. And, you know, are they having spasms? Are they retaining urine? Are they turning blue? You know, there's so many different things that can go on. And knowing what to look for and then how to respond by knowing the remedies is really, really key. So we created a little bit of materia medica for newborns and preemies and infants. And I'm going to let Dr. Alex jump in and talk about LAURACERASUS. This is such an amazing remedy.
Yeah, so we chose this chapter as well because we need to act quickly. You know, it's not, this is a circumstance that is life and death, and it's definitely not a condition where you can get remedies, because if you don't get the right remedy, the baby will die. So it's important to have a few remedies on hand, and it's important to know what are the keynotes. And if you're not sure, you can always reach out. So with LAURACERASUS, there is a lot of sleepiness. There is no response. They look like that, but the most important is that the cardio and the respiratory are both involved. So it can be quite cyanotic. There will be threatening of the paralysis of the lungs. You can see that it can be gasping for air, and if it's not gasping for air, it will, the breath will be almost imperceptible, and cyanosis will be there. So, you know, doing massaging the baby the moment he's born, giving immediately the remedy into the mouth, into the mucosa, can make, you know, can make a whole difference between life and death.
It absolutely can. And yeah. I was reading a little bit about this, and they can be gasping and whining and shrieking at the same time if they need LAURACERASUS, which I thought was really, really fascinating. But definitely a lot of asphyxia there, and a very key remedy to have on hand when you're dealing with newborns. The next remedy that we're going to look at today is Carbo Veg. And I know everybody's heard us talk about this remedy so many different times, whether it's on the farm group or in our videos. We've touched on it many different times. But Dr. Alex, will you give us some of the specifics around this?
So with CARBO veg, like with LAURACERASUS, there will be, limpness of the body, lack of reaction, and a bit of cyanosis. But what the difference between one and the other is with CARBO veg, the body will be really cold. Coldness is, the keynote of this remedy. So it feels cold to the touch. Everything is cold. There is even coldness of the breath, if there is breath present still. There is, and they will be gasping for air. But interesting is that once there is a fun, or you create
a breeze or anything like that. Yeah, any kind of air movement.
It really helps the infant. You can see that they improve, even if slightly,
And just as a reference for those of you that follow us on the farm group, you may have seen where we highlighted a case of a calf down in Australia a month or two ago. Well, maybe it's been 3 months now.
Yeah.
That it was this calf was so close to death when we started to treat her. And what was fascinating was they put a blanket on her, a fitted blanket. And what did she do? She climbed up a hill and went out in the wind.
Exactly.
And it was such a confirmatory of the remedy. I was like, okay, we are clearly on the right track with this remedy. And she responded beautifully, and she's doing great now. She's doing really, really great. But she was kind of the perfect picture for Carbo Veg. So for those of you that want to go back and take a look at that case, you absolutely can. The next remedy is antimonium tart. And I remember the first time I heard about this remedy way back in school. It was around drowning. And there's a rattling and a bubbling rails in the chest. It sounds like a death rattle. Dr. Alex, will you talk a little bit more about that, the suffocation and that sort of thing?
So either because, well, we use it if that somebody drowns or a child falls in a pool and inhales a lot of water, but it can be a case of pneumonia as well. There is a lot of rails because you basically drown in your own fluids. Or in the case of newborn, again, he can even inhale the amniotic fluid if the labor was complicated. So there will be a lot of rattling, and as they breathe, you can easily hear the rattling, and they will feel much better when you put them upright. So even as you are stimulating, never stimulate like this. Always put
don't have them laying horizontal. You want them vertical. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Yeah, very, very important for any animal. I mean, it's a little difficult if you've got a baby cow, like in this picture, that's doing something like that. But it's about keeping their
but if it's a cat, a dog, or even a little lamb,
something that you can physically manage.
Exactly. And a few doses of Carbo Veg, and it will bring them, it will, make the whole difference. It is an amazing remedy.
You mean the antimonium tart?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And one of the things that people ask about often, and we'll touch on this a little bit in a moment. I know a lot of people ask about potency and frequency. So we will talk about that in just a moment. CAMPHORA is another remedy around a collapsed condition with coldness. They're icy cold, but they're worse or averse to being covered or wrapped. So they will, they will kick the covers off. They will find a way to move from underneath, or they will want to be cold.
They will wriggle out of it.
Which is amazing to
Usually
watch.
what they do, yeah, they will wriggle out of it. And again, like with CARBO, it can be confused with CARBO because the coldness of the two is very prominent. But the difference with CAMPHORA is that they slip almost into a coma. And there is, or many times, there is these little spasms that it retracts the lips, and it looks like it's called in Latin riso sardonicus, which it's sardonic smile, which it looks like the infant is smiling.
But their face is actually cramping because it's a spasm situation, right? The retraction of the lips. Yeah, and again, just going back to what you said about CARBO-VEG, they both have a collapsed state. They can both have a collapsed state with the coldness. So look for them wanting to wriggle away or move away or get out of the covers, and really going into a deep sleep very quickly, which can be really scary. And getting that remedy into them can make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, and we may not see tetanic spasms per se, especially, if it is on a newborn, and especially if it's getting into a case of coma, but there will be slight twitches, in the newborn.
In the newborn, yeah. The next remedy that we're going to touch on today is opium. And I was reading a little bit about this. One of the things that I found outside of this information that we have here was if the weight of the newborn doesn't increase due to the baby sleeping constantly, or the baby falls asleep while feeding, then opium is a really good remedy to give them in a low potency.
So the keynote of opium is the sleepiness. They will be sleeping all the time. They will have an expression like almost of drunk or intoxicated, and the breathing, it's very I never know how to say this word,
Stertorous, yeah, that's exactly it.
So in a person, imagine a drunk person that has big cheeks, and you can see
yeah, they're really kind of distended and poofed out.
Poof, and makes a noise, it's torture. You can hear the noise.
It's rattling, but it's different from antimonium tart.
Yeah, the antimonium tart, you can hear the rattling of the mucus in the lungs. It is from the cheeks, and they inflate and disinflate. Or you can have a slow breathing, the lower jaw is like, that's why, you have an expression of being drunk or being intoxicated. And respiration, it's uneven. So they might breathe, and then there might be a gap, and then breathe again, and it will be on the slow, never on the fast pace, it's on the slow pace.
Fantastic.
Opium. The opium is, from the poppy. So that's what it causes in
people that use opium.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of other remedies that we did not do slides on that I just wanted to talk about quickly, and I know you can certainly speak to this. We do talk about these in the webinar as well. We do touch on these. For a traumatic birth, whatever that happens to look like, ARNICA is fantastic for premature babies and for hematomas. So if you, think about that, and arnica is always a good place to start. That's, if you've only got 1 or 2 remedies, and arnica is one of them, absolutely start with that. And the other remedy that I found was interesting, it talked about in one of the books that you were sharing with me, Alex, around refusing mother's milk, and the umbilical cord had been wrapped around their neck, and they might have a large blue mark on their lower back. Now that's obviously for human babies, you're going to see that. You may not see the blue mark on an animal, depending on what their skin color is and how much fur they come out with. But, having the umbilical cord wrapped around their neck, think of lachesis. There's a blueness there as well with lachesis.
Mm-hmm. And of course, in the webinar, we give much more detail of each remedy, and
yes,
you have the videos, and of course, if you will have the handout. And
right. So we do a Materia Medica handout, and then there's also copies of the slides. So as you're going through the webinar, and I think there are like 55 slides total, we cover 29 remedies in the webinar. And some of them have this level of detail that you saw with the discussion that we have about each one of them. And then others we touch on for very specific keynotes. And it does go from pregnancy all the way to post-labor for the mom, and the newborn, covering, some of these concerns. Dr. Alex, talk a little bit about how frequent you give a remedy when a newborn is in crisis.
Well, here we would repeat very, very frequent, because you always match the frequency and the potency with the intensity of the condition. So, the vital force needs to be stimulated, and needs to be stimulated. You can give a big slap, or you can give a little tap, but we prefer little taps, little and often, until it's balanced.
Until you see that vital force really
Yeah.
start to come back into play.
Yes, exactly. So I would say in a crisis, in a situation like all the remedies that we cover, I would go every 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
And then as they start improving, then you can go every 15, half an hour. And then once, they are okay,
more on track. Yeah.
they are on track, maybe once every 3 hours, or.
And that's if they're still showing some of those signs. So that's another piece, is reevaluating. But when you have an infant in a LAURACERASUS state, and you're dealing with this asphyxia, and they're turning blue, you're not going to give a remedy and wait half an hour. So that's something that we really want to stress. And higher potencies are okay with newborns. I've seen people use 200, 1M, 10M even in situations where things were quite drastic. And it's remarkable. That's all I can say. It's remarkable to watch them just like come right back in and snap back into their body and have that vital force come back online. Same thing with CARBO veg. They're cold and they're wiped out and they're flat. And, again, as you said, Alex, every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes, what you're seeing, what the baby is responding to. Alex, when's a good time to stop? I guess would be one of the questions I would have for you. Well,
when you see that everything is as it should be, and then there's no point to give more remedies. Just check, of course, because things can reverse. But, when it's a question of, when it's birth situation, they kick in, and they're fine. Once they're fine, because there's no pathology.
Right. They're new. they're fresh.
Exactly. So once that vital force is established and rules the whole being.
If you have any questions, as Dr. Alex said, or if things get a little precarious and you need some support, we are here and we look forward to hearing from you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Dr. Alex. Always a pleasure. We hope everyone's well. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, and have a very nice week.
Bye.
Bye.